Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today is episode 3 of a new series where I interview different people in different industries. Today I have a special guest, Ryan. Introduce you to him.
My name is Ryan. I graduated college in 2019. I went to a small Christian school in the south side of Chicago. While I was in school, I began studying for the CPA exam and ultimately graduated school in December. And then I passed my last exam by that July, so within about 6 months. While I was studying for the exam, I also worked at a small public accounting firm, just like a mom and pop shop. So I got to do a lot of individual work, rental owners, self employed businesses. I even got to do some nonprofit work. And yeah, then I started at Big Four in July, and I work in tax primarily on flow through entity structures. So your partnerships and S corporations, and that's where I kind of live and breathe in as state and local tax is identifying the different tax implications on a state by state basis.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on to be interviewed. Last week we had Nicole who's in audit. So it's great that since you're in tax that we can get your experience and your journey as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
great.
So I guess we can begin with the Q&A. We received questions from Instagram and some questions that I came up as well of things that just to get to know you more and know more of your experience in the tax field. So the first question is from Shiori. She asked, "Did you get an internship before or after graduating and what was it like?"
Yeah, good question. So I actually was 0 for 5 on public accounting interviews. So I applied to some smaller firms, showed up, did the interview, did not get the position, the internship, or whatever it was. And at first, I was thinking to myself, like, am I doing something wrong? Do I look like I have two heads when I'm talking to the people? And I would just go and say that applying for internships is super important before. But if you do not get an internship, I would say as an accounting major, the ultimate equalizer at the end of the day is the CPA exam. Once you do have that credential under your belt, it makes the interview process a lot easier because you get fronted to the top of the candidate list as far as who's applying for that job. I did have a accounting, I guess you would call it an internship, but I was doing pretty much just books for an insurance company. It wasn't a public
Mhm.
accounting internship, but it still sort of counted. But back to my point is the ultimate equalizer is that CPA, but I would also encourage networking.
And another question is, what does a typical day look like for you as someone that works in Big Four in the tax field?
Typically, what I do is I'll check my phone that has emails
Hmm.
just before I log on, just so I know what I'm getting myself into.
Okay.
Not necessarily outside of busy season, but during busy season, we call it at my firm, we call it fire drills, where it's pretty much like something's going on, it's all hands on deck. Like we need every single person to the top of their attention list. So
Hmm.
I like to check my phone before I actually log on, just so I can kind of see what's going on. The first hour or so, I'll spend replying to emails, checking status, see where everybody's at, and then I'll also try to plan out the rest of my day in that first hour or so of work. And then the rest of the day, it really just depends. So I do like tax technology. I help with the legal aspect of it. I call State Department of Revenues to check up on things. I do so much at my job for being at a big four. I wear many hats, I would say.
And then in terms of travel, would you say that you travel a lot, or would you say most of the time you're going into office?
So good question, good point. Fully started at Big Four remote.
Oh, wow.
I
Okay.
started in July. Uh, they My particular office, I think they sent everybody home late March, and nobody, at least in my office in Chicago, nobody has gone back yet.
Okay.
Uh, they so yeah, they pretty much sent me a laptop in July and told me to get to work. But
Hmm.
so I haven't been working in the office. They keep teetering with the idea of going back, but we'll just have to see how this plays out. But
Right.
yeah, so I've just been working from here. This is my desk. I have two external monitors and then the laptop. Pretty decent sized working space.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's really important to have like a good setup when it comes to working from home.
Hmm.
So the next question is from at Beautiful Carissa asks, when you first started at Big Four, were you nervous?
Very. I was super
Mm,
nervous because I had gone to a very small school and that typically didn't recruit, that the Big Four
right.
did not recruit from.
Mhm.
So going in at least like my class of 20 people that started in tax with me, all of them went to DePaul Law School, like Kelly School of Business, Penn State, Alabama, Arizona, Berkeley, like these really nice schools, University
Mhm.
of Illinois. And there I was, like from a private school on the south side of Chicago that I graduated with 5 people in my accounting class.
Wow.
So super nervous when I began, but just know that if you are one of those people who's starting at a big four, just know there's a reason that you're there, and there's a reason
Mhm.
that they picked you and selected you to be on their team. Especially working from home, right? It's not like I could
Yeah.
bring my laptop over to somebody and be like, "Hey, can you show me how to do this?"
Right, right.
Everything's remote, everything's virtual. So super nervous when I first started, but just have some common sense that hey, there's a reason that they picked you and that you're there
Mhm.
and you're up for the challenge. And I know anyone can do it. So
Um, that's good to hear. Another question is, what's your favorite part working at the Big Four?
networking opportunities, even though we're virtual, I mean, I've already added over 100 people from my on my LinkedIn from my network, and that's just because
Right.
I've worked with that many people on different engagements, and just understand that at, for the most part, anyone that's at the Big Four,
Mhm.
especially younger, they're on a high like a career trajectory. So think of the Big Four as like a launch pad to where you want to be from an accounting perspective, as far as the amount of opportunities that opens up for you, but also know that the people that you work with will also be in those positions further down the line. And so by networking early, you're setting up so many future opportunities. Not thinking of it as a future opportunities, but also rejoice in the time spent with those people. But just think of down the road of how many connections you're going to have. Working at the Big Four, it's prestigious company. I like what I do. It's good work so far. Another favorite perk I would say is the expertise and the knowledge that everyone has. There's such a diverse background and experience from each person. And if you have some sort of question, at my firm, we have what's called tax leads. So each state or each municipality or location will have its own tax expert. So if you're
Okay.
dealing with a client that has an issue in that specific area, you can always loop in the tax expert from that jurisdiction and they'll get back to you. And I just love
Right.
pretty much love the experience.
Yeah, I know that Big Four has a lot of specialty teams. For instance, they'll have one dedicated to international tax or
Yeah.
state and local tax. So it's really good that there are so many people that you can go to for information. And then, like you said about networking, I met a lot of my friends post college through work, and it's just nice to also keep in touch with them too. And you never know when the roads will meet again.
And it's pretty much the brightest people there that you're going to be working with too,
Right.
because of just the strict requirements to get in.
Yeah, their recruiting process is very particular in what they look for.
Hmm.
So recently I've been getting a lot of messages of people saying that they can't find an internship. So I was wondering, do you have any advice for anyone who's struggling to find internships or a full-time job for accounting slash finance?
My number one like practical tip is if you go on LinkedIn on your desktop. Now you have to be on your desktop to do this, but what you can do is you can actually filter LinkedIn by people who went to your school as well as people who study the same major as you. So what I did was is I filtered my school name and I filtered the accounting degree, and then you're
Hmm.
able to see every single person who at least has your university listed on their LinkedIn that's in the
Okay.
accounting field, and then you could even detail it to city. So like
Mm,
I would select they went to my school, they studied accounting, and they work in Chicago. And
okay.
then you're able to find some common ground with people who are already in the profession, in the field,
Hmm.
and you can shoot them a message on LinkedIn and invite to connect and just pick their brain about things. Hey, what is somebody like if I want to work at your company, what does that look like? What is somebody that they're looking for, the personalities, the traits, the knowledge that some person like that has? And people like to help other people because the people that I did reach out to, they were really super excited to jump on a phone call or forward a resume or push my name through. So that's definitely the practical like tip I would have.
So you're saying that one of the big ways to find internships is to use the network, either
Yeah.
from your high school or your college that are studying the same field that may have already a full-time job at a company that you want to work for.
Exactly. Yeah, and so and just finding common ground with that person, right? The HR people, especially at the Big Four, they don't relate to like what the tax stuff that somebody does on a day-to-day basis, and they're just there for recruiting. So if they get your name from somebody that's already working there, that's going to immediately put you to the top of the
Mhm.
list of applicants, if that makes sense.
I remember when I was at Big Four, one of my friends, she got into Big Four through a referral, and that's how she got her interview. And she is still at Big Four for about 5 years. So
Wow.
definitely having someone that works there can help, or they can also help like interview prep, look over your
Yeah. Oh,
resume.
yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
Mhm. And, you know, they'll know the types of questions that get asked because once
Yes.
you start
Hmm.
getting, like, 2, 3 years in, you become the person that interviews the candidates anyway.
Right.
And so it just makes sense, and back to the recruiters, like, they you know, they want good referrals. They would like referrals because that means they don't have to do too much work to find, like, a qualified person
Right.
if they get your name in. So I would guess that'd be the most practical way, but as far as from, like, a motivation standpoint, you know, you're gonna apply to a ton of jobs and don't feel discouraged. Thomas Edison, the guy who invented the light bulb, said, I haven't failed. I just did 10,000 ways that didn't work. And so just you're going to keep applying, you're going to
Yeah.
keep grinding it out. Like I said, use your network, your school's accounting program. My school didn't have two they had a decent like network for some of the smaller firms, but as far as Big 4, it
Hmm.
wasn't there. I know some of the bigger campuses, they have halls of Big 4 and they just have like professors from each of the Big 4 that teach there. And they set up like tents and they hand out like water bottles and stuff. If your
Right.
school doesn't have that, you just gotta grind harder. You just gotta
Mhm.
work a little bit harder to get there if that's what you wanna achieve.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, I came from a school that was relatively large, so they did have events that were geared towards accounting student directly from the Big Four. But I understand that not everyone goes to a school like that, and sometimes it's a lot smaller. So, like you mentioned, it is good that you just put a little more effort into getting your foot through the door.
Yeah. They like to see that too. They like to
Mhm.
see somebody who has the motivation, you know, no company is gonna hire somebody who only applied just because their teacher made them to. I
Right.
promise. It's gotta be your will, it's gotta be your dream, somebody who has the will and drive, and they like to see that, so.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good advice too. So the next question is, what was your CPA journey like, and do you have any tips for those who are currently studying for the exam?
I would say from a before you start studying part is first you have to like figure out what if you're eligible. Each state has its own eligibility. In my state, you need 30 accounting credits and 24 business credits.
Okay.
Each state is different. What I would also say is the default route is not always a master's degree to become CPA eligible.
Hmm.
I did a bachelor degree in accounting and finance, and I found
Okay.
myself at about 140 credits between those two degrees.
Mm.
And another requirement of my state is I need 150 credits. So
Right.
I had to find about 8 credits, which was pretty easy because I was able to get some internship that I had discussed earlier, as well
Okay.
as just taking like online classes. So that's important. One pro tip is if you're studying for the CPA, I would recommend FAR first, and that's just because of three reasons. The first reason being your knowledge of generally accepted accounting principles and revenue recognition and all of
Mhm.
that is never going to be better than when you leave undergrad.
Right.
Unless you work in that field, you know, like I work in tax, I don't do revenue recognition too much.
Hmm.
Once I get the work, that's already done for me, and I'm just like filling out the tax return. So your knowledge of GAAP and revenue recognition and FASB and all the stuff they test on FAR will never be better than when you first leave. Second reason is the material on FAR is so massive, it actually bleeds into all four of the other exams in a little bit. For
Okay.
audit, it bleeds in because audit is auditing management's representation of the financial statements, which are prepared under GAAP for
Hmm.
publicly traded companies. So FAR bleeds into audit. BEC also gets some of the material from FAR because we talk a lot about organizational structures in BEC, tone at the top, leadership and management, but also ratios, a little of accounting, journal
Hmm.
entries, foreign derivative hedging. That's all in BEC too. And then the last thing is FAR also commingles with reg a little bit too because you have book to tax adjustments. So you have to take GAAP financials and convert them to IRS and what the IRS wants. And as far as the last one, the last exam, third reason, is you only have 18 months between when you pass the first one and you pass the last one.
Mhm.
You want that timer to start and end, obviously in 18 months. You want to start with a harder exam, FAR or reg.
Mhm.
Typically, those are considered the two hardest just based on a depth of material. You don't want to take like an easier one for you, like a BEC audit, whichever one's easier, because that's when your 18 months starts. You want to save whatever exam you work in and whatever you're good at for last. So as a tax accountant, like I like reg, I like the law, I like the tax law. You want to have whatever exam, whatever field you plan on working in that you're the strongest in, take that
Mhm.
exam last because let's say 16 or 17 months goes by and you have to Hail Mary an attempt. You want that attempt, that exam to be whatever you're strongest in. Let's say 17 months goes by and I had to study and take reg within a month. Is it
Right.
possible? Maybe. Is it going to be difficult? Yeah, but hey, I at least have a shot because
Mhm.
I work in the field.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you when you say that to start with FAR first because I started with audit first and I thought FAR was actually the hardest exam out of all the four.
Yeah, it is.
And
Definitely is.
yeah, I think the easiest for me was BEC because it was
Yeah, that was
the
my high
least
score
amount
too.
of
Yeah, material.
chapters. Yeah, least amount of materials, but FAR, it's pretty daunting. So definitely give yourself a lot of time to study for
Mm.
FAR because I remember it was, I think, 10 chapters, and I was just like,
Time.
I don't know how I'm going to do this, but
I still remember, like, if you tell me a section and a chapter, I probably know what it's about. Like, that's just how much, like, I was in that book and just
wow.
lecturing and helping other people with the CPA exam too. And
Hmm.
yeah, FAR to start. Another recommendation would be if you do not want to go with FAR first, do whatever you spent your last class doing. Another thing that helped me too is my final semester in school. My school offered advanced financial accounting, which covered government, nonprofit, consolidations, bankruptcy accounting. So all that's covered on FAR, and it was a good transition into
Right.
studying.
And then what CPA material did you use to study?
Becker is the best. I use Becker just because that's what my firm offered, and as long as you put in the work and you work super hard, I don't think you're not going to pass if you get Jaeger. You're not going to pass if you get Wiley. That's not true. If you put in the work, I think anybody could pass. It's just Beckers seem to be like way more organized because I did test all of them at least once. Like
Oh,
I had the free
wow.
trial. Yeah, just a and I will admit I used Ninja multiple choice questions a lot too. So
Hmm.
it's about $60 a month. If you can find somebody to split it with, that'd be great. But 1,200 multiple choice questions on top of whatever your exam material is, you're just going to be super prepared and ready for the
Right.
exam.
Yeah, I also used Becker and I found that to be what worked best for me. And I used the self-study
Yeah.
Becker
Yep.
material because I didn't really like going in person. That's just not the learning style. I like to just learn kind of through reading it or watching online.
Yeah. And it's quicker that way too. You're moving to the beat of your own drum at that point when you
Right,
self study. My routine was, like I said, once I figured out the formalities and it's all about your strategy, your plan. You have to
right.
set a goal. You have to say, hey, I want to take this exam by this day, this exam by this day, because if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time.
Hmm.
If you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time. So if you don't set a goal for yourself or say, hey, I want to plan to take this exam by this day, if you're just aimlessly kind of wandering around, it's kind of like when I guide people to get out of debt. There's a million
Right.
and one ways to get into debt. There's only one
Hmm.
way to get out, right? And so that's the same thing with a CPA planning is set a plan, set a written plan for yourself. Get a calendar. Becker actually has like a little calendar format in there that you can kind of say, hey, here's my start date, here's
Right.
my test date, here's how many hours a day I can study, and then it'll map out a little plan for you.
Yeah, that's really good advice for those that are still studying the CPA exam, which I feel like it's still a lot of people. Going back to what you said, I think a plan is definitely something that's needed.
Another thing I would go back to is the failed attempts. So
Mhm.
it happens, but believe me when I say that you truly only fail this exam when you decide to give up.
Mm.
Because at the end of the day, like my license is hanging on the wall. I've had friends who take it 3, 4 times for an exam, and it doesn't matter. They just keep going. Like I said, you truly only fail the exam when you decide to give up.
Right. Can you explain a little bit more about your CPA study session?
Yeah, so the CPA study session, I just kind of started. I actually started just like coaching one on one. I started teaching all the material, all 4 sections of the CPA exam, but I realized that my depth and my knowledge wasn't as great in all areas as it would be if I would have just focused on reg. So as
Mhm.
far as teaching the material, I like to just kind of helping people go through the reg material specifically, just because I work in tax all day, like I'm familiar with that. But a lot of it is motivation and
Okay.
from a motivational standpoint. And I've told people before this is like my true job is to be a motivational speaker, somebody to, and that's kind of what we do is like we set up a
Right.
plan, and then aside from the planning and the diligence and the checking in and holding people accountable, there's the gamesmanship of taking the CPA exam as far as
Mhm.
exam strategy. Um, how many minutes per Tesla do you do? When you show up to the exam, what do you write down on that sheet of paper when you get it? So many things
Right.
that I've learned as a candidate and guiding
Mhm.
people through that have helped and worked. I like to share that experience and I share that knowledge with people who are currently studying.
Right. So it's not just the technical knowledge, but also you have to shift your mindset when you go into preparing for the CPA exam and really
Yes,
getting through it because it is a very hard process.
absolutely. I probably studied 1,000 hours at least
Wow.
for all 4 because I had the retake. And another thing too, I want to say is there's going to be people that say if you got anything greater than a 75 that you study too much. Do
Mhm.
not listen to those people because
Yeah.
um, you want to study and be comfortable with the material going into the exam. At the end of the day, you want my goal, and I heard this a lot, like, hey, you're studying too much. You're going to do fine for those exams.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, I wanted to be a CPA, not somebody who studied for the CPA. And
Right.
to me, it didn't matter how much time I put into it, is because at the end of the day, that was my goal. And I would just say, follow the guidelines as far as how much they should say you should study per exam, but just know that you're going to feel ready based on your mock exam scores and how you're answering the multiple choice questions a week or 2 before your exam.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's just
Mhm.
good to go in, try to shoot for like the highest score you can, and hopefully you get past that 75 score
Yeah,
mark.
yeah, shoot for the
Mhm.
moon.
Yes. So the next question is pretty specific to the person that's asking the question, but this person asks, I'm in engineering and MBA working for accounts payable for 5 years. Can I take up CPA? And is it possible to complete in 5 years?
Wow. So I would first say that if you're an engineer and you have an MBA already, you definitely have the mindset and the capacity to become a CPA. And as far as the 5 years thing, reach out to me personally or directly because I want to figure out exactly what state you're in as far as the qualifications. If you don't have a lot of accounting credits through your undergrad, like I said, you might have picked some up with that MBA. I'm not sure. I'd have to look, but and so you can get the MAC, which will probably get all your accounting credits out of the way. Now, like I mentioned before about all those business credits, you might have to look into that too. But I would think that most of them are filled by your MBA already. As far as timing goes, I began college in fall of 2016 and I became a licensed CPA by the summer of 2020. So 4 years, you can do it, I promise.
Yes,
Especially if you're already an MBA and an engineer. I think you can
right.
definitely.
We'll share Ryan's contact at the end where we'll link to his Instagram, but this question is very specific, but like Ryan said, it's definitely not impossible to go into the
No.
CPA.
Like I said, your route to becoming CPA eligible is going to look a lot different than a lot of people's.
Mhm.
Other different people. You just got to know the requirements of your state. Some states actually
Right.
say, you need to have. Some states are only 120. There's a few
Mhm.
120 credits, and but like most, I'm pretty sure all 50 states have the accounting credit limitation to some capacity. That hey, you need to have at least 8 to 10 accounting classes under your belt before we're going to let you sit for the exam, and it all
Right.
depends on your state. So
That's a really good point. So the next question is, what advice can you give someone who has gotten rejected by Big Four and feel like they want to give up?
Play the hand that you're dealt like it's the one you always wanted. Sometimes some doors close and others will open at the same time. I personally, I tell this story before, is I applied to this one Big Four that I actually work at now
Right.
27 times, and I got 27 like basic rejection emails. And eventually one day, like I said, a door opened up. I was able to talk to somebody in the industry and find a connection, and the right door for me opened up
Mhm.
at that point. And so just stay persistent, and one day it's going to pay off. It's not the Big Four is not the end all be all of accounting. There's
Right.
plenty of great firms in mid tier small firms, everything. But like I said, play the hand that you're dealt like it's the one you always wanted. There's a reason why that just didn't pan out for you, and you may not know
Mhm.
it today or tomorrow, but you'll find out one day. And back to what I was saying earlier, I was 0 for 5 for my public accounting interview. So I applied to like smaller firms,
Mhm.
internal audit. I applied to all these places while I was in school. Had I have gotten one of those internships, I may have gotten a full time offer, and I wouldn't be working at the Big Four now. And
Right.
so just think of it as like a purpose, and not to get scripture or Bible or anything, but just know that you'll find your place. You'll find somewhere. I promise. I definitely just keep like I said earlier, just keep at it. Just apply everywhere. Use your network. Use your connections. And I say this all the time. At the end of the day, the ultimate equalizer is the CPA license. If you have to take a job, maybe it's at a smaller firm, and you want to get into the Big Four, if you use your smaller firm experience, 1 to 2 years of experience, you get your CPA license, and then you can lateral into the Big Four, and
Right.
you're going to be at the top of their list to hire because you're already licensed. They don't have to put in, they don't have to train you as much, and they don't have to pay for your materials or license because you're already licensed. So
And then, I mean, I would agree with you too because I applied to 3 out of 4 of the Big Four, and then 2 of them, I received a rejection, and then one of them I got rejected, but then I applied again the next year, and then that's when I finally got in. So definitely, if you get rejected, I would say just keep going too, and just don't give up on that process.
yeah, definitely, and especially right now because the job market is so competitive, especially
Yeah.
with companies looking to downsize. Accounting from a risk perspective is it's safer than most professions. I would caveat by saying it, but just know that there's tons of people competing for jobs right now, and it's just the nature. Once companies start hiring more people, they're going to need more accounting guidance. And at the end of the day, no matter if your company downsizes or is still available, you're still going to have to file tax returns and get audited. So that work is probably always going to be there.
Right. So the next question is from Yvonne asks, what made you choose tax among other service lines?
I would say because I wanted to do audit at first. All the interviews, all the internships, like I
Wow.
applied for at first were audit, just because of my Excel background. I thought audit was more for like critical thinkers. I was told, audit opens up more doors and opportunities for future like CFO, controller type roles. I
Mhm.
wanted to do audit at first, but to be quite honest, there was no like it was hard to compete with all those other
Right.
people from schools that were in audit. And then I had my tax classes, and I was just so, and I had two pretty good different tax professors, but I was just
Mhm.
so intrigued with the complexity and the gray area they call it in tax. But
Yeah.
I was so intrigued by the knowledge and just the law and everything. I just took it all in, and I learned more. I learn about it every single day. There's something new I learn about. I like to stay in my realm of expertise as far as subsections of the Internal Revenue Code, but I just learn something new every single day with tax,
Right.
every day. And I think that's super cool. And hey, I don't have to pay people to file my tax returns, my family's
Right.
tax returns. A lot of people put tax on the back burner as far as, hey, we're going to make our money, we're going to do what we do, and then we'll worry about
Mhm.
taxes on the back end. But proper tax planning and strategic guidance through a tax professional can actually be a value added service, especially when you talk about reverse audits where you look at prior year tax returns and state returns, and you go back and actually look at and see if there were different filing positions they could have taken, but also from business decisions like buying big capital expenditures or big assets. Having a tax,
Right.
service or tax background will allow you to be a part of that conversation. And at the end of the day, somehow money that you make or a business makes, it's going to get taxed either way. So the tax guy always gets brought into the conversation.
Yeah.
If you
So
can find a way to make money and not get taxed on it, let me know.
the next question I want to talk a little bit more about the financial experience that you have.
Started teaching the Dave Ramsey Financial Peace class at my church back in the spring, and then we couldn't transition to online quick enough, so we had to eventually drop the course. But it's something that I'm pretty passionate about is personal finance and helping get people out of debt because the fact is 70% of Americans cannot afford a $400 emergency expense. So
Hmm.
7 out of your 10 closest friends, if car breaks down, they do not have the money out of pocket to pay for it, right?
Right.
Furthermore, the number one cause of divorce in America is money fights,
Hmm.
and the average person now cannot afford to retire until they're 74.
Right.
1 in 4 Americans will be disabled before they're 65, and these are just all facts, and I could back them up with articles. But this is what got me into helping teach people personal finance, especially
Hmm.
helping them get out of debt. It's because it isn't taught in school, and
Yeah.
by the colleges and high schools not teaching it, like not deciding to teach it in school, they're relying on the individual's parents, and that's assuming that the parents were actually properly taught personal finance. First to start with a budget, and the budget. A lot of people think a budget is restrictive. Like when people say, "Oh, I'm on a diet," right? People, oh, like what you find out though by making a budget is, and you're tracking your inflows and your outflows and your bank statements and whatever and your Chase account, is that you actually see where your money's going rather
Right.
than having, $1,500, $2,000 coming into your bank account every month, and then just at the end of the month it's gone, right? And again, back to the plan thing. When you analyze your expenses and you see where every single dollar is going, you actually feel more free because now you're actually tracking your money and figuring out where it's going rather than the money coming in and the money going out. Be allergic to debt. That should be the reaction. Consumer debt is no good. Credit cards, you could rack them up, but then also the saving for retirement thing. Something very shocking to me was shared the other day by Vanguard, and it talked about the average net worth of somebody in their 20s. The average person doesn't have a positive net worth until they're 30. And
Oh,
this is excluding house debt.
right.
So I'm cool with mortgage debt, like a house,
Right.
you own a house, but other than that, I mean, student loans, you need to get student loans to get an education. Just be smart, just be a little bit smart about it. Pick a wise choice of a school that you want to attend and be realistic about the earning potential, maybe about your major. I ended up doing like a 13% Discover student loan for like my last semester, and I paid that off immediately because
Right.
that power of that 13% compounded, it doesn't seem like much. And a lot, because they don't teach this in school, but be very careful with the interest percentage. I graduated school with about $30,000 in debt,
Hmm.
and it was all at about a 5% interest rate total. So
Right.
$30,000 times 5%, that's $1,500 a year. $1,500 a year. So if I don't pay, so you take $1,500 a year divided by 12, gets you about 130 a month. If I'm not paying at least $130 a month, I don't even reduce the principal balance of my loan.
Right.
The loan keeps building up by the amount of unpaid principal. They wanted me to pay $130 a month as a minimum payment.
Hmm.
Coincidence? I don't think so. The track that they had me on was to pay my debt off in 15 years by making these
Hmm.
monthly payments. And I don't even think that's valid because doing the math, it wasn't even denting that principal that I was talking about.
Right.
So you have to be super diligent, super intense, and super game planning when it comes to getting out of debt because nobody's
Hmm.
going to save you, and they're definitely not guiding you down the proper path. Like I said, my interest alone was about 130 a month. They wanted my minimum payment to be 130 a month. So
Wow. It's almost like they were setting you up for a not so great
yeah,
decision. But yeah, I also graduated with $30,000 in debt, and I just didn't like the interest that I saw, because it was pretty high, and just seeing that just on my statement each time I went to go
Yeah,
pay it. So that's kind of like why I decided to prepay my loan. But yeah, it is very enticing for a lot of people pay the minimum, but if you can afford it and you can kind of delay some events, so like for instance, travel to maybe when you pay off more of your debt, I
yeah,
think decisions can definitely be
big,
made.
big expenses. So,
Yeah,
so in finance, we call that delayed gratification.
right.
Giving up something today so that way tomorrow you can have something greater, right?
Hmm.
So giving a little today so you can have a great big future, and that's a lot of things that doesn't get taught to people, especially in their 20s. You get out of college, you get a job for the first time, as and then you also deal with a thing called what we call lifestyle creep. So
Right.
lifestyle creep is where I go from being a broke college student to I actually start making money now,
Hmm.
and there's a spread, right? Because just because I'm making money now, I still have the same monthly expenses as I did when I was a broke college student. But I live a lifestyle as if like I can afford that. And so you need to find a margin, right? Just because you make X amount more dollars doesn't mean you need to spend that difference, right?
Right.
Live that lifestyle of what you just got done living the last 3 or 4 years, and it'll just set you up for a lot of financial success down the road.
Right. Completely agree with that. The next question is because a lot of the viewers are people that are in college, getting out of college, or young adults. So the question is, what are some tips for people in college or right out of college that can help them start off on the right track in their personal finance journey?
Yeah. So some good tips I have is actually on one of my Instagram pages, I have like a 7 steps that I would recommend. First step is just $1,000. And it's just
Mhm.
getting $1,000 in a liquid bank account. It's almost like, the fire extinguisher when you break the glass and pull it out. Like that's your $1,000. You just want to leave it in an account. When crap hits the fan, that's gonna be there as your emergency fund sort of thing. The second step is to have your health insurance covered, and this is either through an employer or maybe your parents. But we gotta have health insurance at a young age, especially when we're working on getting out of debt and we don't have enough money because we cannot afford a major emergency. And then the next step is to at least contribute to the employer match of your 401k if you have one. And this is super important because time value of money. If you study accounting and finance, you know what this is. Time value of money is the idea that a dollar today is not worth the same as a dollar tomorrow. And your spending power for that dollar significantly decreases over time if you do not invest it. And there's a thing called the money multiplier that these guys that I listen to talk about. But at the age of 20, every single dollar that you invest at the age of 20
Yeah.
is 88 times that dollar when you turn 60. So if I invest $1,000 at 20, it give or take, it'll become $80,000 by the time I turn
Mhm.
60 in a 40-year span. If you wait till 30, that $80,000 that you would have had now becomes $24,000.
Right.
So you can see the difference. I
Hmm.
start 10 years later in my investing journey, and I'm left with 3 times less the amount that I would have had if I started when I was 20.
Right.
That's called the compound interest. And
Hmm.
you don't have to get, like I said, you don't have to invest. I'm not saying max out a Roth IRA. I'm not saying max out your retirement. I'm saying
Right.
just contribute to at least the employer match, 5, 6%, whatever it is. And the employer match is free money. It's your
Hmm.
company putting in the money, matching the money that you already put in, and it's going towards your future and your retirement accounts. And then you could just go down the steps, but I like to start paying off some of that higher interest debt. So for me, I identify that as anything greater than a 6% interest rate. So a lot of car loans, some student loans. Like I said, I had those student loans that were 11, 12%. Try to get
Hmm.
those paid off as fast as possible.
When we get out of college, we're like, oh, retirement, like that's so far away. But in reality, if you
Yeah.
planned for it, when you were younger, and anyone can start whenever, but it definitely helps out with like you mentioned, the compounding interest. That definitely helps.
If you're somebody who hasn't started investing yet, or is looking to, C.S. Lewis, the person who wrote Narnia, said, "You can't go back and change the past, but you can start today and change the ending." Whatever happened in the past, like the past is the past, we can't
Right.
do anything about it. But hey, you can make an informed decision today to set yourself up for financial success in the future. I tell people this all the time, like, my personal only goal with money is to make sure that anybody with my last name doesn't have to worry about money, right?
Mm,
It's not like I don't want like a nice car, I don't want a Patek watch, like I don't want any of that because
right.
at the end of the day, they do not take a screenshot of your bank statement and put it on your tombstone, right? It's not like that's not how it works.
Mhm.
Maya Angelou once said, "People will forget what you did, people forget what you said, but they'll never forget the way you made them feel." All people will remember you at the end of the day is not about how much money you accrued or accumulated, but they'll remember how you treated others and what you did with that money to help other people out. Whether it's, I want to pay for my kid's college full, I want to pay for my grandson's college, right? If you read scripture, the Bible says a good man leaves his children's children an inheritance, not his children's children's. I can't talk, an inheritance. So yeah,
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, I think when we talk about money or we talk about personal finance, it makes it seem like
scary.
we want to be millionaires. But actually, that's also same
No,
as you. That's not my goal in life. But it's with the resources that God gave you, how can you use that wisely versus someone with the same amount of income might not save it or invest it, but they could be spending it lavishly. So it's kind of like being able to make wise decisions with your personal finance, but not for the end goal to be super rich, but for you to just be good stewards of what God has
yeah,
given you.
yeah, and that's what it's all about at the end of the day. Is just being a good steward of the resources that you have available to you, because if you can't be trusted with anything, you're not going to get a lot of it. And it talks about that in the Bible, like with the parable of talents. So it starts with baby steps.
Right,
Good, diligent, disciplined decisions incrementally over time leads to big rewards, I would say.
right. Awesome. And another question is related to work-life balance because I know you have not just Big Four work, but also you're involved in coaching and also helping out with the CPA. So how do you maintain a good work-life balance?
Discipline, like, have a
Hmm.
plan. Like I have my calendar, although it's very bad because I have the penmanship of a fourth grader, but have a calendar, have a plan set in place, of your daily routine. I had a buddy in college, he would write out everything he was doing the next day, like the night before. Just say, you know, 9 to 10, I'm gonna wake up, eat breakfast, watch the news.
Right.
10 to, I'm gonna go to school. He would write out every single like plan of his day before the day happened. Because again, if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time. So if you just go into your day like aimlessly, like not knowing what to do or not
Hmm.
knowing your schedule, like it's very easy to get sidetracked, especially with all the social media platforms there are nowadays.
Yeah.
If you want to be productive that day, plan your day out.
Right. That's a really good advice. And then I also want to talk about your Instagram because I know you have videos up there on IGTV. So my question is, what motivated you to create an account and also to post videos that's free for anyone that's interested in wealth building, taxes, investing, and more?
Yeah, yep. So, like, not guiding people in high school and college as far as making it a curriculum to teach those material,
Hmm.
personal finance, investing, wealth building, taxes. None of this is taught in school right now. Versus they teach, stuff that I would argue, like philosophy, for example, may not be one thing that me as a CPA, like, I don't need any of that
Right.
personally. But would I have liked to be somebody who got a personal finance class, or which I did, but somebody going out in the real world, they have no idea what any of these things are. Where did we go wrong in America in the education system to where somebody could go to school for over 20 years
Right.
and not be taught about how to save and invest, not be taught
Yeah.
about retirement, not be taught all these things? And that's where I come in at, is as a younger person saying, hey, we need to put really detailed attention to this as soon as possible, because the debt timer, if you actually go to the federaldebt.com, there's a
Hmm.
timer that shows the amount of debt that America
Right.
is in as a country. But that's just a reflective of what us on a personal level are, right? The average student graduates with $35,000 in debt. Like I said, the average person doesn't have a positive net worth until they're 30 years old. Uh,
Hmm.
you hear all the time about like millennials aren't buying houses, they have to push back having
Right.
kids. All this stuff is um, a repercussion of not teaching this stuff at a younger age. All
Right.
everything that's happening on in the world right now about, you know like I said, millennials not saving for retirement or buying houses or having kids is a direct correlation because we didn't teach this stuff at a younger age. I would
Mhm. I would agree with that too. It's a systematic issue where
Yeah.
it's not always the blame is not on a single individual. It's
No.
really has a lot to do with education and the fact that some people may not be able to afford the education or be in a place where their school provides that education. So I definitely agree with you that something like this is very important. But also like on your Instagram, the fact that you're able to post videos that are related to this, I think is really good because I don't think there are a lot of free resources out there as much where it goes specifically in tax. And then I also want to ask you, what are some of your passions outside of work in Big Four slash tax?
So passions definitely working out.
Hmm.
I like to get my workout in 5 days a week. I'll go back to some of the discipline stuff, but there's this guy that wrote a book and he called it The Wheel of Life, but it's 7 different areas that you should set goals for yourself and identify goals and targets that you want to achieve in the
Mm,
short term as well as the long term. The problem with a lot of like at least people our age is we have short term thinking patterns. You
right.
know, thank God it's Friday. Oh, shit, it's Monday type of attitude where we're not setting any goals for ourselves. Setting goals for yourself in the short term leads up to bigger goals in the long term because every person that I've deemed successful in my life, this doesn't revolve around money, but where they're at in their career, their family, a good person, a good man or woman is they have long-term thinking patterns. Where do I want to be at in 3 years from now, 5 years from now,
Mm,
10 years from now? And what are the steps that I have to take today to get to where I want to be? Um,
right.
so like I said, one of the passions is working out and then motivational, just talking like this, motivational talking. And back to the,
Mm,
the circle thing is there's 7 areas that you want to set goals for yourself in life. And I can't think of them, all of them off the top of my head, but they're spiritual, financial, career, physical, relationship goals. And you want to set goals in each one and you want to address attention to each particular goal because no one is more important than the other and almost think of it as a deck table with 7 legs. If
right.
you're lacking in one of them and that leg snaps, your table's going to teeter. And
Right.
this is your life. You want to set goals in these 7 areas and just be effective with your planning. So that's that's one of my passions outside of work.
So the very last question is, can you give any advice to anyone who's pursuing a career in tax or accounting?
Oh, it's a great field, especially if you work at a mid-tier or a larger firm. I mean, you're in 3 to 4 years from working, you're going to get put in some sort of senior, even a manager type of role where you're going to be supervising people, putting teams together, coordinating,
Mhm.
coordinating information. I don't know any other sort of career trajectory where you can find yourself at 25, 26, 27 years old and leading a team in accounting, there's opportunities everywhere across the board. And it doesn't have to be specifically tax, audit, or accounting. There's consulting opportunities, advising, risk assurance. There's so many different avenues. And even if you wanted to say screw it and go outside of accounting, there's tons of an accounting firm is looking to hire people as even HR managers or
Right.
HR resource people who have an accounting degree. There's so many opportunities, and I would say the CPA is the gold mine for anyone in the accounting field. So at least try, start with that and attempt that. But yeah, it's just a great. I think it's a great career path. Accounting really is the language of business, and like we said, at the end of the day, the money has to be accounted for, the tax has to be paid. So you definitely want to be on that end of the transaction.
Thank you so much for joining today's
Yeah.
episode and sharing your insight and journey. I know I learned a lot, and hopefully the people that are watching did too. I do want to share your Instagram. So your Instagram handle is at RyanBCPA, and your other Instagram where you post most of the IGTV is at Learn Like a CPA.
Hmm.
And I know you said that you are thinking about starting a YouTube channel. So when that
Yeah.
happens,
Yeah. That's start.
definitely check him out too. That wraps up this video. Thank you everyone for watching this video. Make sure if you enjoy this video to give it a thumbs up and we'll catch you in the next one.
Bye, everyone.
Bye everyone.